Now that Destiny 2 seems to be dying, I thought this would be an appropriate time to release this video. Hi, this is JWTY5, or 2JWTY5, formerly known as Julian F. Wong. 2 years ago, I started getting addicted to Destiny 2, a looter shooter game, which gives players awards upon completion of certain goals. Now, at first, I was a relatively casual player of the game. I only completed the basic campaigns of the game and did not venture deeper into the higher level activities such as dungeons and raids, which requires 3 and 6 people respectively to complete the mission if you're a beginner. I will basically play the game, get loot, level up my character and call it a day. And that was before Bungie introduced a new level system, the Guardian ranks. Basically, it was an alternative to the normal power level that you would gain through completing activities in the game. The Guardian ranks were basically a flex on other Guardians since the higher rank you were, it meant the more challenging endgame activities you would have completed. For example, to progress through level 8 to 11, you will need to complete all the raids and dungeons fresh. And that means that you need to complete all the encounters from start to finish in one sitting or at least once. That was the point where my brain was suddenly wired from completing casual activities into thinking about trying all the dungeons and raids. Now, unlike the recently released Destiny Rising mobile game, where you can play the first raid by matchmaking with strangers in-game directly, that was not the case for Destiny 2. In Destiny 2, you would have to either do LFGs looking for groups through the Destiny 2 companion app or through the official LFG Discord server. I only discovered the companion app after being told that I can only increase my Guardian rank if I completed the raids and dungeons, and that was my starting point of being addicted to this game. I'm a competitive person when it comes to any game. I always like to be a high achiever in especially FPS games where I will capitalize on my self-acknowledged good aim and fast response time to climb up any ladder that is deemed respectable. When I was a total newbie in doing the dungeon and raid mechanics, getting blamed by people who put KWTD, that is, know what to do, in the title of their LFGs, and ending up wasting their time, that really made me feel guilty. Why did I not watch guides before I tried to complete these dungeons and raids? Feeling like a loser, I took the blames to heart and started investing seriously into learning the mechanics. I had to learn all sorts of callouts, weapon and ability combos, and even eventually movement tricks such as whale skating and sparrow flying to progress through these endgame activities as quick as I could. We went from completing these dungeons and raids once into farming these dungeons and raids because I grew to adore the satisfaction you get when you can do all these movement tricks, both as a flex to other players and knowing that these skills can always be improved almost infinitely. So, when did the peak of my addiction begin? The answer lay in 2 events. This video by one of the best speedrunners in Destiny 2, and also the How to Dungeon Discord server. I was hungry for the knowledge that Destiny 2 speedrunners like Quater showcased in his speedrun records because they seemed so amazing, and most importantly, getting superfluous records in the dungeon dot report site also as a flex to other guardians if they wanted to blame me ever again for being a bad teammate. That's what we all do, right? So I absolutely wanted to earn the ego and reputation of being capable of becoming a somewhat decent speedrunner by having all kinds of good runs that are going to be shown on a third-party website. Now, there was briefly a period when I was only using the Destiny 2 companion app, typing the infamous KWTD, but also with speedruns in my LG titles, since I actually wanted capable players who can at least support me in my runs to getting a lower time in all the dungeons in the game. It wasn't until a specific person that had joined one of my LFG runs was I introduced to the How to Dungeon server. which was created by the very person that introduced the D2 speedrunning scene to me. The How the Dungeon server contained extremely specific guides into how people should farm each of the dungeons with specific roles. For example, if you were to farm the Shadow Throne dungeon, you should have one person on Hunter doing the skip from entrance to Foregath, which is the first boss, and one person on Warlock doing the skip from Foregath to the final boss, with the final person choosing either Hunter or Warlock or even Titan to complete encounters as fast as possible. At first, I was overwhelmed by all the information in the server and the efficiency that the top tier dungeon farmers are showing in their runs, which are effectively speedruns in themselves. This server basically had all the people I wanted to work with in getting a lower time in all the dungeons. However, it didn't start off well. I remember being kicked by one of the top speedrunners in the community in the dungeon because, again, I was dragging their runs by not completely knowing what I was doing in my role. Again, I felt this sense of guilt and a sense of regret for not understanding their roles better, which then sparked up my passion for redeeming myself and my ego. And I did this by seeking other dungeon farmers who could at least teach me as I went along with learning all the different farming roles. Eventually, I got 3 to 4 people that had the same aspirations as me in getting a faster run in each dungeon and ramping up the number of dungeon clears. And we started to practice runs after runs on each dungeon until we were satisfied with the time we got down for a dungeon. At this point, I was completely devoid of socialization. I did not know a single name from the uni dorm that I lived in and even only ate instant noodles without anything else as a meal many times when I prioritized grinding dungeon clears over anything else. I went from attending lectures and tutorials of my uni courses regularly to gradually missing so many tutorials that I got a warning for my attendance rates. All because I wanted that unfathomable achievement in climbing up the ladders of a third-party website, which doesn't even have any benefits to me except fueling my ego that I was becoming one of the best speedrunners in the Destiny 2 community. Crazy, right? But it got even worse. Many speedrunners in Destiny 2 would have also known that cheats like limiting and ring run were readily available and were even encouraged for farmers to ensure an even faster and more efficient farming sessions since these cheats were basically undetectable if used correctly. Now, I will not go into the details for how these cheats work, but basically they were just making our weapons shoot impossible numbers to the bosses. So we can, for example, turn a DPS session of a dungeon boss from the usual Well of Radiance plus rocket launcher combo to a single fourth horseman shot. If you know, you know. I will admit it, I was guilty of this crime. I was comparing myself to all these top speedrunners and I could not resist in achieving faster dungeon times, while at the same time increasing my efficiency in farming the dungeons. So I learned how to limit basically cheated the rest of my way through grinding dungeons until the very last day before I uninstalled the game and realized how bad I have become as a person. By this point, you can probably already tell that I was another one of those people who had very few friends IRL. That is exactly also what kept me going for almost an entire year being addicted to dungeon farming. I met people who share the same goals with me and are nice and welcoming to me. One of them was even some of the chillest and nicest dudes that I ever talked to until today. Shout out to you, Slap. If one of the groups of people are out, I will have another group of people to farm another dungeon with me. Therefore, this vicious cycle goes on and on from dawn till dusk, and this was basically my lifestyle for my entire first year at the university. No socialization and no IRL activities whatsoever, just pure Destiny 2 dungeon farming. Very, very few people in the farming community were on my pace in farming the dungeons, and I quickly rose up the ladder in a badge that showed the total completions of all dungeons. I was top 10 at my peak. It also got to a point where I was deemed to have initiated the second wave of dungeon speedrunners, where so many former and OG dungeon farmers have all burnt out and stopped playing the game for the rightful reasons. I learned from these farmers who came before me and continued until when most of them are gone, and new farmers like myself once have come onto the scene to learn and become the next best dungeon farmer. It makes me proud of myself to hear that I'm a I'm the leader of the second wave or whatever, but also in a way I'm a culprit for making other people fall into this same whirlpool that is not easily escapable, that can really ruin your social and offline life if not controlled properly. I do not recommend anyone to become addicted to any video games, as it will sacrifice a lot of your time with your friends and family or any other meaningful activities that you are capable of doing instead of this nonsense. Eventually, I too was burned out from grinding so many dungeons in Destiny 2 that the effects came to haunt me. I had no real achievements nor friends in my offline life, while the dungeon farming sessions became so repetitively boring to me with the same people every run just made me start to think whether what I'm doing is really smart or not. I think it's safe to call myself a jerk when I have all the time in the world being a fresh university student and not cherishing it in experiencing in as much activities as possible, or alternatively think about how I should spend all my free time in contributing to increasing the price tag above me, that is learning actually useful skills that will contribute to my wealth later. My usual group of friends online are also not as passionate about farming dungeons as they were before, so the day of me uninstalling and quitting the game for good was closer and closer. I had started picking up some hobbies that are actually beneficial to developing my offline identity. For example, I had never really cared about reading the news, so I started reading news on BBC and The Guardian as a start to make myself familiar with everyday happenings. I also started to learn more about popular music through radiomusic.com, RIM in short. Most importantly, I started to learn about ways of personal care. Ever since I realized how obnoxious my diet was when I say on some days I only ate instant noodles as my entire meal. As little as looking up fashion trends, skincare routine, and cooking recipes, I had already been bettering myself and treating myself a lot better than the days when I was clearing the same dungeon over and over for 5 hours straight or even more. I finally uninstalled Destiny 2 on July 31st, 2024. I can remember the exact date since I transitioned from being addicted to Destiny 2 into discovering so many niche pop albums from RIM, which would be an infinitely better activity to be addicted to than grinding completions of an activity for a badge that is not even officially recognized by the developers of the game itself. But whether being addicted to RIM is good or not is another story. Since then, I really started to think about becoming more socialized and meeting more people offline that shared similar interests with me apart from gaming. For one, I was super into classical music, and maybe in the next video, I will also talk about an even crazier addiction of mine, which completely made me avoid listening to pop music at all for almost all of my teenage years. But for now, at least I started to rejuvenate myself by actually catching up with my old friends, spending simple but meaningful time with them, and at least feeling somewhat more present in my own life. I didn't realize how bad my addiction was until I looked back at it months after I became sober with the game. Now that Destiny Rising is out, I will play the game, but I will try my very best. Pinky promise not to be addicted to the game. At least there ain't going to be any third party websites that I'll be aiming for or grinding for like dungeons or raids. So fingers crossed, touch wood. I hope and I will try my very best not to be addicted to this game. Please like this video if you have enjoyed hearing or relating to my story, and let me know in the comments below if you have any similar experiences of addiction in video games or in any other hobbies or items. Also, feel free to ask me any questions about my addiction, anything you would like to know that I didn't explain in my video, and I'll be more than happy to answer them in the comment sections below. Thanks for watching, and this is 2JWTY5 signing out. Peace.